Hey, what's going on, guys? My name's Jitters. Welcome to the channel. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to beat Ishizu Tear using Spright. A couple weekends ago, I played in the remote duo YCS, and I did pretty well. I ended up going 7-3 throughout both days. And I played a lot of Ishizu Tear. I think 7 Ishizu Tear. I ended up going 5-2. Yeah, so I just want to talk about some of the stuff I learned playing in that remote duo YCS, and hopefully this will help you guys out if you're playing this matchup or if you're struggling with this matchup. So let's just get right into it. So first thing you have to understand is that when you're playing Spright into Ishizu Tear, you are at a disadvantage. The deck is definitely not as strong. That being said, you definitely can still win if you play it right. Especially going first, you have a lot of nice tools, and going second, you have a lot of great non-engine. So know that it will be an uphill battle, but if you do play the matchup correctly, you definitely can still win. So the first question is, why Spright? There's a couple reasons for why you'd play Spright. One of the big ones is the BYSTIALS. The BYSTIALS are very strong. Everyone's playing like a lot of them, anywhere from 5 to a full suite of 9 in their decks, and that's because of the tier deck. Spright, on the other hand, does not lose as hard to the BYSTIALS, and your main combo doesn't really care if you get Bystial during it, and sometimes you just don't even have a Dark in the graveyard for the Bystials to be live. So another one would be that you're just kind of bored of the other decks, or maybe you just like the deck in general. And those are all valid reasons. The deck is very strong and it does have a lot of potential. It's good into a lot of the floodgates that people might try to play. It plays better under D-Fissure and stuff like that. So there definitely are reasons to play Spright, in case you were on the fence on it. So I want to start by talking about what I call visualizing the matchup. So the way I like to look at it is that Tearlaments is kind of like a waterfall where there's a lot of water rushing down, and it's very much all over the place and seems uncontrolled. And as the Spright player, your job is to be almost like a funnel and to basically narrow down what Tearlament's doing and try to very much simplify the game state as much as possible. And if you're able to get to that simplified game state, that's where the deck really shines. So just thought I'd mention this here. What are the best builds for Spright? Currently, in my opinion, the best build is probably the pure build, running at least a handful of Bystials. That's anywhere from 5 to up to 9. What I like about pure is the non-engine cards that you can run are very powerful, and the deck really synergizes well with the Bystials, being able to like bounce the Magnemite and get extra searches off of it. But that being said, you can play other builds. Something like the Adventure build is pretty decent as well. So what I like about the Brave build is that it does have that extra Omni Negate that can be used to protect your combo. And then also being able to, swap Frog, bounce the Griffin is nice to play around Dark Ruler. It's not bad. It gives you an extra negate. The Dracoback is a nice piece of removal for troublesome floodgates. The issue with it, though, is that it does lose pretty hard into Kelbeck, because them being able to bounce your token when you search the Griffin Rider is pretty much kills like most of that engine. So that is something to worry about. So when it comes to non-engine cards to play, here are some of my favorites. The Bystials, of course, are very strong. I think everyone knows that at this point. They're very good into Tearlament, being able to stop their fusions. I'm also a huge fan of cards that can steal the opponent's monsters. Cards like Econ especially is very strong. Triple Tack is very strong as well. So the big thing with Tier is that the trap cards are the strongest cards in the deck when it comes to interruptions on your turn. And all of those cards require them to have a Tearlament name on the field. So being able to take those cards with like a Change of Heart, a Tactics, an Econ, basically turns off all those traps. And Econ's also really great because it's able to dodge the Suliak since it targets. Dodging that Suliak means that they don't get to send a monster for it, so that kind of stops all the like fusion and the looping on your turn. Other than that, there's some more generic options. Imperm is, of course, very strong. Imperming or Veiling a kit is super impactful. Stopping them from searching one of the traps or like the name they need to be able to mill their 5 or 8 cards. And then DD Crow I actually really like. When it comes to just hitting the names, DD Crow definitely isn't as strong as Abyssial, but it does have some other utility, being able to hit something like if they mill a Shuffler off like Havanus and you need to get to Toad, you can mill that, you can hit that. Or like if they go like Keldo, pitch one of the millers, you can chain the DD Crow to banish the miller, and then when the Keldo resolves, there won't be the miller in the graveyard. So you can kind of avoid the mill 5s in that way. There's also a lot of times where people play around the Bystials with like the Redoer. to trigger the Sheeran, and then they don't have monsters on board. And in that case, DD Crow is also very strong at being able to just, come out of nowhere and banish the Sheeran so that they don't get that effect either. And I wouldn't count DD Crow out. It's still decent. Of course, having access to BYSTIALS is definitely stronger, but in general, I do like the card. So next, we're going to talk about going first. So when it comes to going first, this is kind of the main end board you want to end on. Having Elf Toad with a Djinn Buster if possible, and then either the Double Cross or the Smashers is probably the most ideal end board, along with any other non-engine you had. So if you have like Econ, the BYSTIALS, those are just kind of extra icing on the cake. I also wanted to quickly mention IP. IP is not a bad idea with the Elf, because going into Avermax is nice for protecting your Toad when they try to go BYSTIALS to try to attack over it. The only thing with IP the reason I like Djinn Buster better is that if you overlay your blue and your jet for Djinn Buster, chances are you only have one dark in your graveyard. So if they do try to go battle phase on you and then use a BYSTIAL to run over your Toad, you don't really have to worry, because they can only summon one, and then your Smashers or Double Cross can deal with it, and then they lose their battle phase, and at that point, the BYSTIALs are no longer really a threat if they can't kill you or beat over your board. Going into Avermax with IP is also not bad, because then that prevents them from attacking over Toad as well. The next question I wanted to answer is the Double Cross versus Smashers. I do like them both, and they're both good options, and I think it's important to understand the pros and cons of both when deciding what you want to search. So when it comes to Double Cross, I think it's an excellent card. Being able to have a third Toad negate is super, super strong into any matchup, tier included. And the best part about Double Cross is that you can revive the Toad even if the opponent doesn't have a monster. So you can more freely negate cards like Sheeran in the hand or the Field Spell or Instant Fusion and not worry about not being able to revive the Toad, because the Double Cross can bring it back. Double Cross also has the added utility of acting almost like a Bystial at times, because you can special summon a tier name from the opponent's graveyard to stop the fusion effect. And it's also great for protecting you in the battle phase and doesn't require you to have that extra body on the board. So it doesn't play as heavily into cards like Super Poly, where you need to maybe summon like the Swap Frog from your deck. And then you also don't have to play that third brick if you're going for the Double Cross every time. The main issue with Double Cross is that it does target, which opens up the possibility for the tier player to play cards that can't be targeted. Probably the biggest example is Baguska, where if you have a monster that they can run over, saving your Double Cross can be tough, because if they end up getting 2 level 4s on the board, they can make Baguska turn off the Double Cross, go battle, and then go for Zeus. The other option is Smashers. I actually really still like Smashers. Of course, you do need the extra body to be able to banish off the Smashers. Another problem with Smashers is that it doesn't, affect the graveyard in any way, which, is one thing Double Cross has over it. The thing is, though, is that Smashers can actually hit spells and traps, which is very, very strong. Being able to negate Perlerino is nice if you negate it with Toad. But if they have a second one, they can just activate the second one. But if you have Smashers, you can prevent it from resolving so they don't get the search, and prevent them from activating a second one if they have it in the hand. It's also just nice because it doesn't target, so if they do try to go Baguska, battle phase, go for Zeus, you can just Smashers it away, and that also stops the Baguska. Similar to Econ, it can dodge cards like Suliak. It's better going second if it's in your hand. It's not the best card to have, but it's not that bad. I'm a fan of both. It really does depend on your playstyle and what card you prefer, but either one is fine to search off the jet. So here's some big things to watch out for when it comes to going first. Probably one of the biggest ones is the Havanus. The thing is, Havanus milling a name is not that scary. If they mill like Sheeran or Merly and you have a Bystial, you can easily like stop them from resolving, and you're not really like scared of the Havanus, right? And then you're not wasting the Bystial because you can always Swap Frog, bounce it back to your hand. The real issue is when they mill a Keldo or a Medora, because that's going to pretty much prevent you from going Toad altogether. And without Toad, the board is definitely a lot weaker. A lot of times I will summon red early just to negate the Havanus mills, even though I go -1 and keep her in the hand, just because I know if they mill that Keldo or Medora, it's way, way, way more of an issue than if I let it resolve and they happen to mill those cards. So I would definitely try to negate her if you can. It's another reason why I think Ash is not a bad card, because being able to Ash the Havanus, although also a -1, having that card in your hand means you can freely go for your combo and not worry about the Havanus. Besides Havanus, Herald, of course, is very strong. It's limited to 1, which is why I think Spright got a lot stronger, even though the ban list wasn't that big of a hit. But Herald really does cripple the deck a lot. Being able to negate and destroy the Beaver is honestly borderline unfair. So other than Herald, Imperm's also strong on the Gigantic. But it's tough to play around the Imperm. A lot of people, for some reason, still aren't playing Imperm in their tier deck. And the more common interaction you're going to see is Havanus. So because of that, if you can't get to both red and carrot, I would prioritize the red. But if you happen to draw the carrot to stop the Imperm, you know, it's not bad. Must hit cards. So Perlorino and Instant Fusion are pretty obvious. Instant Fusion, you pretty much have to negate it if they start with that on their turn. You don't really have a choice. Perlorino, depending on if you get the Smashers or the Double Cross, if you get Smashers, you can just Smashers it away, and that's the cleanest way to out the Perlorino. But if you do have Double Cross, negating it and then summoning the Toad back is also very strong, because even if they do have the second one, you can just negate the second one as well. You will lose 2 of your Toad negates, but that's usually okay. And then I put Sheeran on here. This is pretty much just most of the names. You want to be able to negate them in the graveyard. The Bestials are usually the easiest way to do that, because then they can't chain block the Bestials. But also Sheeran specifically in the hand. A lot of times I will negate that with the Toad, because Sheeran pitching at anything is very scary. If they pitch a Miller, they can potentially mill 5 on you. If they pitch one of the Shufflers, you're pretty much left on a single Toad negate the entire game. And the reason Sheeran is so much better than the other names is that you can activate it in the hand and there's no monster on board. So that means your elf can't revive your Toad before the mills happen. So compared to something like Merly, so if you Toad negate the Sheeran and you set it, it doesn't trigger. And then they have to literally have Keldo in a name or like just normal summon a Keldo. Otherwise, they're going to normal summon a Rhino or a Merly. And in that situation, you can just revive back the Toad because they have a monster on board now. And then in the situation where you chain Toad to Sheeran and then they chain Havanus, you can always Djinn Buster negate the Havanus. And that also prevents those mills from going on without them having a monster. And that allows you to pretty much always guarantee that you'll have the second Toad negate live. The next thing I want to talk about is dealing with the Bestials. In general, as I said, the Bestials aren't as much of a problem. If you go the Djinn Buster line, you most likely only have 1 Dark in the graveyard, and that's the Gigantic. And if that's the case, they can only really summon 1 Bestial on you. And then if they do that in the battle phase, you can just Smashers it away. But if you are playing the IP, or for some reason you have a second Dark in graveyard and you're worried about the Bestials, there are some things to think about, and you have a lot of ways to actually play around them in this deck. For one, if they decide to go Bestial effects in the main phase, always remember that your elf can target their target, like if they target a blue or a jet, and then revive the blue or jet, and that'll prevent this Bestial from resolving, and it'll also get you the free advantage of whatever the search is. Another option is the Double Cross. Letting them summon Jewess Worm is fine as long as you have Double Cross or Smashers, because Double Cross can attach the Jewess Worm to your Toad, and that'll prevent it from having the effect when it gets sent to graveyard. Avermax is also a decent card. The thing I don't like about the Avermax line is if they attempt to enter battle phase, you're forced to use your elf and IP effects, shotgun them right away, which means you only have 1 Toad negate, and you'll end up with Avermax Toad, which does protect you against the Bestials. But if they just continue their main phase, that you just might not have enough negates to stop their actual plays. So it is a little tough to just go into Avermax right away. And the last thing is Smashers. If they have any card on the field, Smashers is very good because you can just banish whatever the Bestials target for cost. That'll prevent them from resolving, and you get to remove a card on the field. So definitely keep an eye out for these situations when they come up, because they definitely do come up. But yeah, that's it for the Bestials. So what's the scariest play in the deck? As you can see from the image, it's pretty obvious, but Keldo pitching Kelbeck is extremely powerful. You pretty much cannot let this entire thing resolve. It's very, very, very strong, because the whole play gives them the Keldo adding the yugioh. The Kelbeck's going to mill 5, potentially hitting a name. And the yugioh is going to summon itself and revive back the Kelbeck, giving them 3 level 4 bodies, as well as potentially a fusion in the graveyard. And the other thing is that one of the bodies is a Shuffler, so if you Toad negate anything from now on, you pretty much lose the Toad the rest of the game. So Keldo pitch Kelbeck is very scary, and it's one of the hardest things to deal with when playing against the deck. So the first way to kind of deal with it is negating the Keldo with the Toad. This isn't the worst thing, because you then get to set it. You put them on 4 cards in the hand, and then you also can Double Cross revive back the Toad, and they don't have a Shuffler live right away. There are a few problems with this play. The biggest one is that they won't have a monster on the board, so your Bestials are not going to be able to stop any of the tier names in the graveyard, so they pretty much get the fusions guaranteed. So I don't always recommend doing this. It's also not a bad idea to let the Keldo resolve if you have cards like Crow or Ash Blossom. Ashing the Kelbeck or DD Crowing the Kelbeck when they first initially pitch it means that they won't get the mill 5, and that's probably the scariest part of the combo, because if they Keldo pitch Kelbeck and you Crow it or Ash it, they go Sheeran Effect, and you negate that with Toad, suddenly you're in a pretty good spot, because you can double cross, bring it back. If they try to Keldo, you can Jin Buster. Let's say they bait out the Jin Buster. At least if you hit the Sheeran Effect and steal it, they have 3 cards in hand, and one of your cards might be Smashers, and if it's Smashers, they can't Pillarino for anything. If you have any Bestials, you can stop a normal summon Rhino play. Of course, another way to stop the Kelbeck is just negating it with a red, a Jin Buster, or like Toad. And the final way to kind of deal with this is just using your Double Cross or your Bestials to just stop the names in the graveyard. Especially since Keldo will be on the field most of the time, because most people are not going to just shotgun their Keldo and chain it to their Kelbeck before they've milled. They're usually going to wait and see what the mills are. Maybe save the Keldo for like you're totally awesome and when you use it so they can, remove it for the rest of the game. So because of that, your Bestials are pretty much always going to be live on this mill 5. You can kind of deal with the level 4 bodies later, because if they decide to go Baguska and you have Smashers, you'll be alright. But if you do have Double Cross, this can get a little bit scary, since they can just summon 2 bodies with the yugioh and then go right into Baguska, and then suddenly you're dealing with a Zeus, which is definitely, a scary thing to be dealing with. So be on the lookout for the Keldo pitch Kelbeck play, and try to be at least mentally ready for it and know what you're going to do and if you do end up seeing it in your game. The next big thing is when it comes to going second. So, of course, just some obvious stuff. Imperm on Kit is very strong, and then using your Bestials on the tiers is also very, very strong. The only thing to keep in mind is that if you have a hand with a mixture of like an Imperm and a Bestial, you have to let the first fusion resolve so that you can Imperm the Kit and then just save your Bestial for the second fusion. Because if you Bestial first, you'll have a monster on board and then you won't be able to Imperm the Kit. But besides that, yeah, this is pretty straightforward. When it comes to breaking the board, as I said before, I love cards like Econ, I love cards like Tactics, I love cards like, even like Cosmic Cyclone's not bad. Because again, the most important things to deal with is like the Suliak. That and the Crime are the scariest cards. If you have Cosmic in hand and they don't have Crime, because let's say you Imperm Kit and then you get to search it, chances are off the Scream, they're only going to search the Suliak. And you can just hold your Cosmic to negate the Suliak at any point. That's similar to Econ, which is being able to dodge a Suliak is absolutely crazy. There was a game in the YCS where I had a Bestial on board because I Bestialed one of their cards and I Imperm the Kit. So Bestial Imperm. They ended up having a Suliak, Kit Kalos, and then a Baguska in defense mode. So I went normal summon Nimble Beaver, linked them both off for Sprint, and went Sprint effect. And then he decided to Suliak my Sprint. And from there, I chained Econ, tributed my Sprint for cost, and then took control of their Baguska. Summoned 2 Beavers, switched Baguska to attack mode, and then from there, it was just pretty much GG. Go Gigantic, summon a Blue, summon a Jet, all this, and then at that point, it was just game over. So Econ is definitely one of my favorite cards in the matchup. It's super, super strong. And for breaking the board, especially like just dodging the Suliak is honestly invaluable. So I would definitely recommend playing it if you're playing the deck. Again, it's not completely necessary, but definitely a great option. Tactics is similar. It's not as strong because it won't dodge a Suliak, so they'll still get to fuse. Another card I've seen get play is from Joshua Schmidt is Swords of Concealing Light. I really like that card as well because it functions very similarly to cards like Change of Heart in terms of it just like removes the tier names off the board by flipping them face down. And that, again, turns off all the traps. So if they have Crime, they're basically forced to just shotgun it on that card. So it really does open up a lot of plays if you're playing a card like that. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is Dimension Shifter. A lot of people are playing this card, and during the YCS, I also played it. I just wanted to give some thoughts on it from my experiences with it. I can definitely see the value. The good thing about Shifter is that when people know you're on Spright, they're just going to start milling 5 on you with every single one of the millers. And Shifter's nice because it does stop them from doing that, and it does pretty much end their turn. The problem is that it's very hard to kill under Baguska. The play that people are going for is they're going for the Codebreaker 0 Day to attack over it. And that definitely is a great play, of course, but it leaves you in a spot where you can't really make a good board because you yourself are under Shifter. And then because you're making a very, very weak board under Shifter, you pretty much have to kill them. So in my opinion, Shifter is definitely playable. It's alright. But personally, I'm not a huge fan. I think the next time I play the deck in a tournament, I'll probably cut this card. That might backfire. I'm not 100% sure, but I again, I only drew it once or twice, and I won pretty much all of my games. I think four of them without even drawing it. So I really do question whether or not you need to play it, but it definitely is strong if you do decide to play it. So, and with that, that's all I have to say. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video or learned something, please leave the video a like and subscribe to the channel. So, uh, thanks all for watching, and see you guys next time.